20s across parts of Wales, low 20s for parts of southern and eastern Scotland. But for Scotland, for the far north of Northern Ireland, we'll see outbreaks of rain, heavy and persistent for western Scotland by dawn on Friday. Clear spells once again further south and a muggy night to come. Temperatures really not dropping far on Friday morning and then rising quickly during the day with the strong sunshine once again. Now, for Scotland, for Northern Ireland, a weather front here will bring thicker cloud and some outbreaks of rain, perhaps fringing into the far north of England by the afternoon. But further south, with the strong sunshine, temperatures will be remarkably high, shooting up from Thursday up to 34 Celsius in places before coming down at the weekend.
Tonight on GB News, at 6, it's Dewbs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry. Now, we all know what's happened last night, don't we? The flight to Rwanda did not take off. Why? Well, because of an intervention from the European Court of Human Rights. Now, this has led to calls that the UK should leave that institution. Should it? What do you think to that? And as we all know by now, childhood obesity is on the rise, as is now, very sadly, the number of children who are getting type 2 diabetes as a result. There's been loud calls today that the government is, I quote, letting our children down. But hold on a second, because if you ask me, it's the parents' job for the health, safety and well-being of their child. Why is everything the responsibility of Boris Johnson, including the size of your children? We'll get into that one. That will be a fiery debate because if you ask me, I think it's almost akin to a form of child abuse. If you're allowing your child to get so large that they are giving themselves the potential for lasting health damage, there's something wrong with you, if you ask me. Where do you sit on that? And e-scooters, what do you think to these? I've got one and I absolutely love it. But the first pedestrian life has been claimed by a collision with one. So, should they be banned? According to some people, yes, they should. Where do you sit on that? We'll have all that to come, but first, let's look at tonight's latest news headlines.
Michelle, thank you. The top stories this hour on GB News. The Home Secretary insists the government will continue with its plan to deport illegal migrants to Rwanda. That's despite a last-minute ruling by the European Court that stopped a planned deportation flight yesterday. A spokesperson for the Prime Minister says they're keeping all options on the table, including potentially withdrawing from the European Convention on Human Rights. Priti Patel says the government's determined to find a way forward.
While this decision by the Strasbourg Court to intervene was disappointing and surprising given the repeated and considered judgments to the contrary in our domestic courts, we remain committed to this policy. These repeated legal barriers are, Madam Deputy Speaker, very similar to those that we experience with all other removal flights, and we believe that we are fully compliant with our domestic and international obligations, and preparations for our future flights and the next flights have already begun.
Well, the Labour Party has criticised the plans, saying they're unworkable. The Shadow Home Secretary Yvette Cooper describing yesterday's flight as a short-term stunt and saying the Rwanda scheme is not serious policy.
How shameful does that make us look around the world if our Home Office cannot take those basic decisions? She knew about problem after problem. With her policy, she knows this is unworkable, unethical, and won't stop the criminal gangs, but yet she still went ahead and spent £500,000 chartering a plane she never expected to fly.
But a manhunt is now underway to find a dozen suspected migrants who arrived in the UK this morning, landing off the coast of Devon, and who are believed to have absconded. GB News understands the Coast Guard received reports this morning of a speedboat carrying 12 illegal migrants landing on Slapton Sands, that's 30 miles from Plymouth. The group reportedly disappeared into two vehicles that were waiting to pick them up. In other news today, Yorkshire Cricket Club and a number of individuals have been charged by the England and Wales Cricket Board over allegations of racism. An independent panel of the Cricket Discipline Commission will now decide if the individuals have brought the game into disrepute. The ECB hasn't named those involved. The charges follow an investigation into the club's handling of racism allegations made by the player Azeem Rafiq. The government says it's disappointed the European Union has decided to take legal action against the UK over plans to unilaterally override the Northern Ireland Protocol. The EU says if Britain doesn't respond within 2 months to their challenge, it'll take the UK to the European Court of Justice. EU Commission Vice President Maros Sefcovic says the issue has damaged trust between Europe and the UK.
There is no legal nor political justification whatsoever for unilaterally changing an international agreement. Opening the door to unilaterally changing an international agreement is a breach of international law as well. So let's call a spade a spade. This is illegal.
The government's considering sending more anti-ship missiles to Ukraine to help the country defend itself against Russian aggression. Ukraine says more than 500 civilians are still trapped inside a chemical plant in the eastern city of Severodonetsk, where its forces have resisted weeks of intense attacks. Much of the city has been reduced to rubble. Moscow is claiming they'll evacuate the civilians through a humanitarian corridor if Ukrainians lay down their arms. The Prime Minister says he's deeply concerned about what may have happened to the British journalist Dom Phillips, who went missing in the Amazon. A second suspect has been arrested over his disappearance and that of the Indigenous expert Bruno Pereira. The country's ambassador to the UK has apologised to Mr Phillips' family after incorrectly telling them a body had been found. And lastly, Prince William has met the England women's football squad ahead of the home Euros next month. The Duke of Cambridge visited the team at their St George's Park headquarters in Burton-on-Trent as part of his duties as chairman of the Football Association. Prince William says the Lionesses are trailblazers for women's sport and will do the country proud. He was presented with some replica shirts for his 3 children by Captain Leah Williamson. You're up to date on TV, online and on your radio via DAB+. You're with GB News, where now it's time for Dewbs & Co.
Thanks for that, Polly. Well, keeping me company here until 7 o'clock tonight. You've got my panel, Baroness Jacqueline Foster, DBE and former MEP. Columnist also at the Mail on Sunday, Peter Hitchens, and anthropologist Mary-Ann O'Hotter. Good evening to you three. And you know the drill on Dewbs & Co, don't you? It's not just about us here, it's about you at home. What's on your mind tonight? Whether it's about the topics that we're discussing or is there anything you think we should be discussing that we are not, you can get in touch with me on email, gbviews@gbnews.uk. You can tweet me at Michelle Dewbs or at GBNews. Andrew, you were one of my first emails in tonight. You said, please, can someone teach Michelle basic grammar? According to Andrew, I keep saying me and my team, and you want me to say my team and I. I didn't even realise I'd said the T word today, Andrew, but I'll take your point on board. My panel and I, as opposed to me and my panel. I shall consider myself schooled by you, Andrew. Thank you for taking the time to do that. Right, we probably all know by now that the flight from Rwanda was cancelled at the last minute last night, wasn't it? Why? Well, because of an intervention by the European Court of Human Rights. But earlier this week, Britain's Supreme Court had decided that the flight could go ahead. Are you confused? I don't think this is the end of it, I've got to say, because the government say that they are going to fight on. So let's have a look, shall we? But before we get into some of this, should we just start by explaining what the European Court of Human Rights is? I'll tell you what it isn't, by the way, because it's not anything to do with the EU. Lots of people are saying we voted Brexit, so we should be out. The two are not connected. But let's start from the beginning, shall we? If we go back to the end of the Second World War, the UK was one of the founding members of the Council of Europe in 1949. It was set up to promote democracy, protect human rights and the law in Europe. The Council of Europe then set up the European Court of Human Rights in 1950. Again, the UK was a founding member. The court was set up to implement the European Convention on Human Rights, which the UK was the first country to sign in 1951. Judgments from the European Court of Human Rights are binding on the members of the Council of Europe and so, therefore, the UK. You got it? Good. I'll test you on it later. Right, my question is, do you think the UK should leave the Council of Europe? I have to say, lots of people quite angry about this, saying absolutely we shouldn't be beholden to this court. What would be the consequences of leaving? Is it a good idea at all? Peter Hitchens, I'll start with you. Where do you sit on this?
Well, I'm not absolutely convinced it's true that the decisions are binding on us. I mean, for instance, they found against us on prisoners voting, and I don't think that's been resolved yet. And several member nations of the Council of Europe, including Germany, say that their constitution trumps the European Convention on Human Rights, and if they disagree, then they don't have to do what they say. And it certainly doesn't have much in the way of power to make us do anything. I suspect, I have to say, the government was quite relieved to get this so-called injunction from the European Court of Human Rights last night, so they then wouldn't have to fly two people all the way to Africa in a gigantic, expensive plane. I'm not at all sure that they were that disappointed by it.
Really?
Really.
So
I think it's lovely for them to be able to say, look at this terrible Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg, all these foreigners telling us what to do. And then they can have a great palaver about the European Court of Human Rights and how terrible it is. They won't do anything about it. And Tory politicians have been talking about getting rid of the Human Rights Act and getting it out from under the European Court of Human Rights for about 200 years now, usually towards the beginning of the Parliament, but nothing ever happened. So I would be surprised. The real decision in all this will be taken by a British court in July when it goes for judicial review. And that's the decision the government's really worried about.
Jacqueline, your thoughts?
Well, I agree with Peter on lots of things, but on the point that where we, the Conservatives, or the, obviously, Priti Patel and others, relieved that the flight didn't go, I think that couldn't be further from the truth. I think it's a great shame that it didn't. When you have had the highest courts in the land, in the United Kingdom, the High Court, Court of Appeal, Supreme Court, and they've upheld the decision. It was not an illegal decision to send these people to Rwanda, which is a safe country. Then obviously everything's been thrown at it to prevent that happening. I think where I do agree with Peter, this isn't the end of the line, because the decision, I mean, what was fascinating is we always know the names of our judges in all of our courts. We can find out who the judges are that make these decisions. And the out-of-hours judge who was on duty at the ECHR yesterday has not been identified. So they appear to be anonymous, whoever they are. But just getting back to that other point, I think they sort of tried to say that one of the prisoners had. His solicitor had said they'd got evidence now that he'd been tortured, which would seem to have been very late.
Tortured, I think,
and of course he hadn't been tortured in Rwanda, possibly from where he'd come from in the first place. We don't know anything about that. But this isn't the end, because this is just a decision to postpone this at present. And government, quite rightly, I've been in the debates today in both the House of Commons, in the gallery, and the House of Lords, and the government are absolutely determined, and I fully support that position, to go ahead with this process.
Marianne, where do you stand on this?
OK, number one, this must not be a party political issue. We cannot afford, we the people, cannot afford for this to become a tennis ball that's bounced back and forth over the House of Commons, for someone to score a few political points, kind of throw a bit of culture wars at it. You go, oh, they would say that, those lefty liberals. We must not do that, because it's too important, this is. It's too important. The basis that any immigration policy must be constructed on is whether it's legal, whether it's effective and workable, and whether it is value for money for us, the taxpayers. And the bottom line is, the way, whatever happens, whatever your position in terms of whether we ought to, on a moral basis, be exporting asylum seekers to be processed in a third country, put that to one side for a minute. The way the government has acted over the past 24, 48 hours has not been effective, workable, or definitely not value for money. Within our own courts, so the courts in our land, the High Court has determined that there does need to be a judicial review to determine whether this is actually a legal policy. And the government have said very clearly, well, hang on a minute, guys, if it turns out to not be legal, so it is entirely possible that judges in the UK, in a UK court, will go, actually, this is not legal, you cannot do this.
I need to come in a minute.
Then they will send people back from Rwanda. They'll reverse those decisions, including this kind of this stand-up case of this Iraqi guy who may or may not have been tortured. He's known as KN in the legal papers. So, and all the other people. They initially the government planned to put 130 people on that Boeing jet to send it to Rwanda last night. Then they were down to 7, then they were down to 6, then they were down to 1, and then it was down to 0. At what point did they go, hang on a minute, guys, we're spending £500,000 to make this point? This shouldn't be about posturing. This shouldn't be about some kind of gung-ho, we're going to do it regardless. It has to be about value for money. If the High Court are going to say in 3 weeks' time it's not legal, why don't we just wait?
You've said value for money a couple of times. This is bigger than value for money.
It needs to be part of the
reason it is a political football is because we have a government that came into power with an 80-seat majority. The majority of people in this country who voted, we gave a manifesto, we put that out. We turned around and we said, people are very concerned about the illegal migration into this country, and particularly the issues with the Channel, people coming on lorries who are being suffocated, etc. And we have tried our best to get sort of political, I would say, others from political parties to come on board. Every time Priti Patel has tried anything, they never agree. I have no idea, to be fair, what the policies are to how we deal with this issue from any other opposition party. I have no idea at all. And in terms of value, we are currently on illegal immigrants. We're not talking about people from Syria, and we're not talking about people from Ukraine or people from Hong Kong. We're talking about 75% of people who are coming into this country are young men between the ages of 18 and 34. We are spending £5 million a day on hotels. And at the end of that, we have no idea what some of them, they walk out of the hotel as well. We don't know what to do. So,
but you utterly misunderstand the idea.
If I may say,
go on.
We have to. Well, I didn't interrupt you particularly, but we have to find a solution. We have found a solution whereby Rwanda is a safe country. Denmark has sent asylum seekers and various refugees there, and so has the United Nations. So for the opposition to turn around now and start basically saying Rwanda's this third world terrible country and the poor people that go there are going to be treated appallingly, that is not the case.
OK, lots of things.
Hang on, because I think Peter wanted to come in for a bit.
OK, yeah.
The point that I made, and I continue to make it, is that the Conservative Party has for a very long time posed as a party which proposes to get immigration under control. David Cameron, when he was Prime Minister, repeatedly made completely empty promises about getting immigration down. Theresa May, you may remember, sent vans around North London issuing empty threats to whoever happened to be passing that they would be found and deported, which of course they weren't. This is all done because the Conservative Party knows that illegal immigration is unpopular and that it shores up its vote to look as it's being tough about it. This policy may or may not work. My doubts about it have always been, since it was announced, that it would probably be tripped up by the legal system and that it might not work anyway. If its purpose is not to send people to Rwanda, if they could actually achieve its aim by not sending anybody there at all, that would be great, because the purpose of it is to deter people coming across the channel. And that is the only reason for doing it, is to let them know there's no point in coming across the channel. But if that's not true, it won't work. But you have to say that as a party supposedly dedicated to getting immigration under control, the Conservative Party has been a bit of a flop, and this could be part of that. We were discussing the whole issue of human rights and whether we should be part of this court. I think myself that human rights are, Jeremy Bentham described rights themselves as nonsense on stilts, and I personally believe that the whole concept of human rights has messed up our legal and political system for years, because it gives judges who are responsible to nobody and who are increasing numbers of people of the liberal left enormous power to decide policy and to overrule elected governments, which is bad for our society. Lord Sumption, the former president of the Supreme Court, devoted his Reith lectures to making this point. And I think that we really do need to look very seriously at whether we can continue to allow judges to have such a role. But to either claim that the Conservatives are a body of racist, imperialist fascists hurling people into the third world, or to claim that the Conservatives are doing a great job controlling immigration, both of these, which is the basic currency of political debate in this country at the moment, both of these claims are completely untrue.
Mary?
Well, I'd agree with that. I think if we polarise the debate to levels of nonsense, then we miss the conversation entirely. And the fact that there's kind of one policy on the table, which I agree with you, Jacqueline, I don't think the opposition is offering a kind of a workable alternative. But that doesn't mean that the only policy on the table, that which Liz Truss and Priti Patel are promoting, if it's so rubbish, it's not going to work, it might not be legal, it's incredibly expensive, it might all go, bottoms up very quickly, and if it doesn't act as a deterrent, then it's a rubbish policy. Let's stop pursuing it. Or just wait and let's see if it actually is legal, then enact it.
If it does work,
judge legal.
If it does work and it does deter people from coming across the channel and putting themselves in the hands of these people smoking
But it's not doing that,
gangsters.
Peter, because they've been doing
No, we've got hundreds of people in small boats.
This isn't the point of the decision. The main point of legal decision is next month, when the judicial review is considered. That's when we'll discover whether the judges are really going to try to block the government. If they don't, and the policy is then implemented, we will then find out if it works. I'm perfectly prepared to judge it on its merits on that basis, and I think everybody should be, honestly. The way in which the people smugglers are now getting people across the channel is absolutely shocking and disgraceful and ought to be brought to an end.
Well,
I'm not absolutely ruling out the possibility it will succeed. I just have serious doubts about it.
2 seconds, Marianne. Let me just bring Jacqueline in.
Yeah, I mean, where I agree with Peter, I don't clearly agree with him on a number of things, but where I do agree with him, there have been very questionable decisions by the European Court over the years. And as you say, they've made decisions and then they've never been carried through. And you've then got to look at really where the jurisdiction is. I don't think anybody... we were signatories because of what happened in World War II, setting this up. This was about setting up an organisation and a judiciary where we could try people for war crimes and the Holocaust, and for very, very good reasons. But we also have to take into account where we are all these years on and what the situation is now, what we're trying to do now. Deterrent is the correct word. Of course we're trying to get a deterrent to stop people coming over. I mean, what is the alternative? We've had people suffocating in lorries. We get people who are drowned. I mean, they reckon there's about 450 people came over today. Now they've moved on from small dinghies. I think the size of some of these boats coming across, I mean, we're nearly on the QE2, frankly. If it wasn't so serious, you'd wonder what was going on next. And then the French have, frankly, done virtually nothing to prevent this. And France is not a war zone. France is a safe country. And
it doesn't matter. Under international law, you can claim asylum anywhere.
If any of those people wish to claim asylum, they could have done it in any country that they passed through before they got to the coast of France. And that is not the case, unfortunately. And as we said, this goes on and on. We're now having to build facilities in the countryside, which are really housing, many, many young men. This is happening in villages. This is not how you can deal with it. We can't keep doing this.
Why are you demonising young men? They also get tortured and murdered and have to escape. They're the people who are policemen. They're the people who are interpreters in Afghanistan. They're the people who are embedded with our own military.
If I may just finish. If you look at Ukraine, we are looking after women and children and probably maybe very elderly people who come from Ukraine. We did the same thing with Syria. These were families. We are in a situation where predominantly the vast number of people coming across the channel and in other ways are young, fit men. I'd like to see them back in their rich countries of origin, actually, fighting for good democracy so they didn't have to leave, frankly. But clearly, we can't all have what we wish for.
We're almost out of time on this one. I'm very conscious of the time. Mary-Anne, just final word. Please be brief.
Yes, OK. I think that it's we should be incredibly proud that we're a member of the Council of Europe. We should be incredibly proud that we were the first signatories of that European Convention on Human Rights. The reason it was set up is exactly what you said. It was about trying the Holocaust. It was about addressing a never again attitude to what happened in those atrocities in the World War II. And that was because governments were doing terrible, terrible things to their own citizens. That's why we have these institutions that sit above the nation state. And we should be proud because it was a moment when the UK, when Great Britain was genuinely great, was genuinely a world leader in these issues. And for us to lose sight of that is a terrible shame.
Well, what we thought,
fortunately. Right, very briefly.
What we thought when we set up this convention was that it would get other countries in Europe to behave as well as we already behave.
Right.
Never that these rules would be used against us.
Well, I think it's because we're not behaving very well at the moment.
Well,
we are behaving quite well, thank you very much.
If we were as bad as we were thought to be, there would be terrible things which we could be...
If we were that bad, nobody would want to come here at all, quite frankly, whether it was legal or illegal.
There you go. Amen to that. If we are indeed an awful nation, why is everyone, apparently, or not everyone, but a huge number of people, seemingly so desperate to come here? I was asking at the start of this conversation, by the way, do you think that the UK should leave the European Court of Human Rights? I'll summarise. Pretty much all of you say, in capitals, yes. There you go. Keep your thoughts coming through gbviews@gbnews.uk. Going to take a quick break now. There's been a rise in children who are obese and a rise, therefore, in children with diabetes, type 2 diabetes. The calls are getting louder and louder and louder that the government is failing these children and must do more. But hang on a second. Why is it the government's responsibility to make children healthy? I see it first and foremost as the parents' job. Where do you stand on it? I'll see you in a couple of minutes.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you. And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents. Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Scale. Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry, keeping me company until 7 o'clock tonight. My panel, we've got the former MEP Jacqueline Foster, columnist at the Mail on Sunday Peter Hitchens, and anthropologist Marianne Hotter. I was just asking my panel in the break, by the way, something that always kind of confuses me is we've got this situation and I've never quite understood why are we not able to declare an emergency in this country and look at creating emergency laws that would supersede essentially business as usual laws. Marianne was just saying she doesn't think it is an emergency in this country. Do you? Get in touch and let me know your thoughts. But for now, we shall park that topic. Lots of you guys getting in contact. Again, a question that comes through thick and fast is it's all well and good everyone saying that, you know, this Rwanda policy is this, that and the other, but nobody really seems to have the answers as to what you do then. If you don't do this, what do you do? And that, my friends, seems to be the million-dollar question. Right, let's move on, shall we? There's been the biggest increase in childhood obesity since records began more than a decade ago. And obesity levels have driven up the number of kids with type 2 diabetes by 50% in the last 6 years. Now, the reason that this is a concern, by the way, because we talk, don't we, about obesity generally often, but, you know, when it comes to diabetes, this is not kind of a flippant, simple thing. This can have quite serious ramifications. Just a quick look at what some of these complications of this kind of disease could be. For example, it can cause eye problems that lead to blindness. It can also lead to kidney problems, and it can cause heart attacks and strokes as well. Now, Jacqueline, I'm going to come to you first because I've seen it very loudly today, but we see it often. Whenever we talk about things like childhood obesity, over a quarter of primary school children, by the way, will leave primary school obese. 1 in 7 will start that way. And you know, 5-year-olds are not responsible for their own food purchasing. It is the parents. The calls that I hear louder and louder and louder is it's the government, it's your government that is letting people down. Is it?
No, I don't think it is at all. I think, you know, I come from a generation where, although my mother worked and a lot of women post-war did work, first of all, there was no junk food around. There was very little junk food around. And even people on low incomes, we were a normal working family. But the responsibility was that the mother made some food, and we obviously tried to get decent food. It's where school dinners came in. We talked about that recently. And there was a good reason why they brought hot meal in at least every day for children. And, you know, we come all of these years on, and we are one of the wealthiest countries, yet we have one of the highest levels of child obesity and obesity general, if you're looking at Europe. And a lot of it is because the amount of junk food around. And you can't just say, because somebody is on a low income, that the child is not going to be fed properly, because that's completely wrong. That means that everybody's on a low income doesn't feed the child properly, and that's not true at all. So I think there's a lot to be done, but it's got to be down to the parents, I think, at the end of the day, to determine what their children are going to eat.
See, Marianne, I've got quite a harsh view on this, and many people will be critical of my opinion, but I think I've got a child. I know you have too. I've got a very young child. If I was to make my child kind of quite malnutritioned, if he was there sitting skin and burns, pale, all the rest of it, people would be saying, I'm abusing my child. I would run the risk, probably, of having him taken away from me because I'm failing in my parenting. It would be akin to abuse. And I actually apply this to the other end of the scale. I think if you are a parent who has a young child who is obese to the point where your child has got type 2 diabetes. I've just read out some of the examples there of the lasting serious health damage that you are doing to your child by enabling that situation. I actually feel it's akin to child abuse. Do you agree with me or not?
I think the condemnation doesn't necessarily help with the solution. So, yes, it is a parent's responsibility to help that child grow up healthy, to know what healthy eating and healthy lifestyle looks like. But you wouldn't necessarily chuck the parent in jail. You're not going to fine them. You're going to help them do it better, right?
You're going to start by helping them. And if those parents consistently don't engage with that help, they consistently allow their child... Because a 5-year-old does not go to a shop. It does not have its own money to spend. You're doing this as your parent.
Right.
So if you don't engage with that help, then actually I do think that child protection services should start to be getting involved.
Well, I mean, they're massively underfunded as well. So... Put them on the list behind all the children who are being tortured or murdered by their parents or sexually abused. Yeah, fine, get to them eventually, but they won't get got to. The statistics that we're looking at here is that 40% of the children who are obese currently are from the most deprived wards in the UK. So you look at obesity and the distribution of kids who are facing obesity, and you look at the distribution of poverty, and they absolutely match. Hand in glove. And so what you're saying, what we need, the conversation that we need to be having is, why is that? Now, you're right, I've got 2 kids. My little one, he's 4, he runs around, he goes to a lovely nursery where they've got lots of resources for them to play outside. He's got wellies and a raincoat, so if the weather's outside rubbish, we can still go outside. We live near somewhere where there's a nice park that isn't full of broken glass and needles. It's got a zip line and a climbing frame. On a Saturday, he goes swimming. On a Sunday, he goes to gymnastics. And me and my husband are very fortunate that we have enough time. We have busy jobs, but we also have enough time. I'm not working an extra job so that I can take him for a walk. We can go to the park. We can go on a play date with his little pals. And those things all make the difference. Now, I didn't grow up rich. There was a time when I was on free school meals. But my mum had the benefit of knowing how to cook from scratch. And so she taught that to us. I didn't learn it at school, but now I could, if I needed to, make a dinner out of sort of fresh home-cooked produce, of some, like a cheap cut of meat or some veggies, some potatoes or what have you. I don't necessarily need to go, I actually don't know one end to the other of a spud.
There's no excuse for not knowing one end from the other of a spud.
Well, you say that, but if you grew up in a situation of deprivation and of neglect... If you grew up in an environment where there is no safe outdoor space for you to play in, how is it that you can have an active lifestyle? If you live somewhere where none of the streets are safe because they're absolutely rammed with traffic or they're not safe for a child to kind of go along, how is it that they're going to be able to walk or cycle or go on their scooter to school?
In fact, let me bring Peter.
It's about deprived, not active communities, and that's where the government investment needs to be. That's where it's not fair.
Most of the children, if I just may say,
post-World War II as well.
Post-World War, we came from blue-collar backgrounds. Children were born in housing areas that had been bombed, all sorts of things. You can't keep saying this. Somebody's in a deprived area or on a very low income, that this is the reason why this child is obese. Because
either the person stats show that.
Go on. Either the person has got the responsibility, as I said, just because somebody is on a low income or they may be on benefits, many people who are in that situation feed their children well.
No, I agree with that.
They feed their children properly. And you can't keep
let's just bring Peter in.
But we're looking at a public health. We're looking at the whole of the public, not just individuals.
There is a young man here who wants his say as well. Go on, Peter.
Completely miss the point. What these children are missing are families. They're missing families who sit down 3 times a day around a table to have formal meals. That's all gone. The government and commerce have encouraged the dismantling of what used to be family life. There's no adult at home, or if there is, there's no adult at home who's in charge. As a result, the whole rhythm and nature of family life as you knew it and as I knew it has disappeared for most people. It coincides with physical poverty because it's worst in the areas where people are worst off. But it's actually mainly about the fact that we have decided that we don't want to have families anymore. And if you don't have families, you don't have meal times. You have a constant grazing on incredibly available and sugar-crammed fast food, which makes people fat. It's nothing to do with exercise. Look at me. I'm 14.5 stone. I take huge amounts of exercise. It makes no difference to how fat I am.
Oh, that's nonsense. Come on. Of course it's about food and activity levels.
Exercise makes you fit. It doesn't stop you being fat. Here am I, the physical embodiment of the proof of that. It is absolutely to do with what they eat. And the fast food diets are crammed with sugar. And this is what we did not get when we were growing up. We were fed more than adequately, but it wasn't with sugar. It was with home-cooked, often not very interesting food, lots of offal and other exciting things, lots of vegetables, fair amount of potatoes, but no sugar to speak of, and we didn't get fat. And we ate 3 times a day round a table in a family. We did not eat between meals. It didn't happen. It's a complete social revolution, and the abolition of the family, what I would insist was the married family, the permanent family, is at the heart of it, as is it also at the heart of so many of the other problems which nobody will do anything about because we won't admit we made a stupid mistake by breaking up the family.
But I am a little bit intrigued when you keep saying, like, we broke up the family. Who did?
Well, first of all, the governments which made divorce incredibly easy in the 1960s, and secondly, the wave of feminists who said the only respectable thing that a woman can do is to go out to work. You can't. It's shameful to be at home raising your own children. It's a demeaning, miserable, reactionary form of activity. Go out to work, and they've lowered the status and meaning and importance of one of the most important jobs that anybody can do. Men can bring up children as well. I'm not saying they can't, but women did do it, and now nobody does it because men don't particularly want to.
But a lot of people in the days that you refer to will have stayed married, so the children would have had a family unit, but it would have been often an unhappy family unit because
I'm not discussing happiness here. I can't legislate for happiness, but there wouldn't have been so many fat people in it. And also,
well, you would legislate for a set of circumstances where you are condemning people to unhappiness, and you're saying, oh, well, men, of course, can raise children and run a household, but they don't really want to. Well, why is that?
That's a question for the ages, but I'm not arguing about it. What I'm saying is we deliberately dismantled circumstances in which children were more happily and better brought up than they are now. So one of the biggest symptoms of this is horrifying obesity among children, which, if it isn't child abuse, is certainly deeply distressing to everybody who sees it. It is one of the consequences of it, and we don't tackle it because the whole issue of what we did with the married family in the 50s, 60s, 70s and 80s cannot be raised because it is sacred to the political elite of this country that we cannot discuss it. I know that because I keep trying to raise it and everybody shuts me up.
The point that you raised there bears out. If you look at most of these horrendous cases of child abuse, child murder, child torture, most of the time you are going to find a fractured family or non-family that's not to say that everybody has to be married and that every single married couple will make a very happy family for the children. I'm not saying that. But where, Peter, I absolutely agree, is the family is the most important. Now, I've worked all my life and I don't have children. That is a decision I may have made for a variety of reasons. But I still think that a mother bringing up the children, and you work it in with work, and I was behind when I was in the airline industry, trying to organise flexible rosters and flexible working. So there are different ways that you can work, because we need women in the workplace, apart from anything else. So I do think that there are ways that we can make sure that mothers are around as much as possible. And you're quite right, it comes back to the children at the end of the day. It is the responsibility of the parents, and then hopefully between the parents they can sort out how the child is fed when it's going to school or nursery or whatever. And so I think that's where we need to be. But we can't keep sort of, it's always the government's fault. It's always everybody's fault. We need to actually get back to that responsibility and how do we best deal with this in a sensible fashion.
I think the bottom line is just create the conditions for success. Have good quality green area spaces, play areas, have play schemes, have holiday support, have affordable schemes where people can learn cooking.
With a concrete playground,
yeah,
they're going to have to probably go to a park somewhere. Let's
have a park.
We've got more parks in London as a capital than any other city in the world. It's not just
no, I don't mean Hyde Park. I mean a play area where a kid can go and play safely.
I'm talking about
that are well looked after.
It's not just about that. It is a combination of things. I mean, I always did sports at school. I still do sports now. I like sports.
Many schools can't afford that additional cost of sports.
Well, the taxpayer is funding the
conditions
education
of sports,
system. There is no reason why the state school system cannot provide some sports for their children.
A lot of schools sell off their playing fields.
They sell off their playing fields to buy textbooks.
It's terrible they sell off the playing fields. I'm against it. But if all this stuff was important, then we wouldn't have had thin, healthy children 50 years ago, and we did when we were a lot poorer, and people lived in many cases in worse conditions. It's not about these things. It's about diet. It's about the way people live and eat. It's also, I have to say, about the commercial pressure on families from the cheap fast food producers and the stuff they put in the food.
Absolutely. So let's tax fat and sugar.
Fat doesn't make you fat.
Honestly.
Sugar does.
Simon says, Simon's been in touch saying 3 cheers for Peter. Lots of people agreeing with what you're saying, Peter, in terms of the family unit and that being an essential ingredient, if we want to say it like that, for when it comes to child health. Do you agree with that? Many people, John, you're a bit extreme. You've got in touch saying your answer is to bring back rations. He said that'd sort out the problem. Be careful what you wish for, John, the way that this country's going. That's what I said to that.
What would be in them? That's the problem.
Yeah, exactly. Lots of people, again, saying about poverty, etc. Just because you're poor, does that mean that you shouldn't be able to know how to cook, etc.? I would absolutely say no. I don't think anyone, actually, in this day and age has got an excuse to say, I don't know how to cook food. I'm going to be harsh. I think that's just laziness, because you've got free information readily available to teach you how to cook wholesome, cheap, easy, often, meals. Some people here saying celebrities have a part to play. They should be saying better things about weight. I'm not sure about that, but I guess some people are heavily influenced. Paddy says the problem is that kids are fat because their parents are fat. It's very simple. The cycle just repeats itself. Julia says, Michelle, you are right. From the age of 13, I was brought up by my nan, who was overweight her whole life. I went from being a slim child to an overweight, bullied teenager. She scuppered every healthy eating idea I ever had, and I really, truly wish the authorities had intervened. I'm sorry to hear that. Right, you've been sending in your thoughts, I have to say, lots and lots of you, many of you saying, if you listen to teachers and their assistants, lots of this sentiment coming up. It's all about children starting school young. They're saying that according to the teachers, this is Tony, if you listen to the teachers, they'll say it's the parents are they're just being lazy, apparently, when it comes to getting their kids ready to start with school. Do you agree with that, or is that a little bit too harsh? Right, going to take a quick break. When we come back, I'll have more of your feedback. But also, I want to talk to you about e-scooters. Do you have one? Do you like them? I've got one, and I think it's fantastic. But many people completely disagree with me. And sadly, we've had the first pedestrian death in a collision with an e-scooter. So what do you think? Do we need to re-look at whether or not we should have e-scooters? Should they be banned or not? I'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Coming up on Dan Wootton Tonight with me, Patrick Christys. As a head teacher at a single-sex school says that she will no longer call pupils girls, Helen Joyce, author of Trans, When Ideology Meets Reality, will weigh in on the latest gender madness. Plus, there'll be unfiltered opinion from columnist extraordinaire Rod Liddle and Spiked Online's Brendan O'Neill. That's going to be box office. And I'll break down the headlines of the day with my superstar panel, media personality Christine Hamilton, entrepreneur and activist Adam Brooks, and broadcaster Ashley James. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. right here on GB News.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry, keeping me company till 7 o'clock tonight. A reminder as to who my panel is. We've got Jacqueline Foster, who's the former MEP, columnist at the Mail on Sunday, Peter Hitchens, and anthropologist Mary-Anne O'Hotter. Joining us at 7 o'clock will be Nigel Farage. Nigel, good evening for you. What have you got coming up?
Michelle, good evening. It's an ECHR special because I predicted that flight would not go to Rwanda, and sure enough, late last night, some obscure judge whose name they haven't released in Strasbourg allows the human rights industry to stop the plane from going. I'll be joined by Tom Pursglove, the Minister for Illegal Immigration. I'll ask him, does this government actually have the courage to leave the ECHR and set this country free from European courts?
Nigel, look forward to that. We'll see you at 7 o'clock. Lots of you still writing in about that last topic there about childhood obesity. The sentiment coming through thick and fast as well is that you don't want to live in a nanny state. You want parents to be parents. Someone's just written in saying, and I've lost your name now, I must admit, you're complaining, oh, there you go, Karen, I found you, you're saying about the government has taxed Pepsi more to try and make kids lose weight. You're not happy, you say, because you love Pepsi, and all that's happened is the kids still drink it and it just costs you a small fortune. She says she wants the government to butt out. In fact, she says, parents, you lot need to sort your heads out. Adrian says, Michelle, I've been a type 2 diabetic for some years now, and the worst time was the lockdown. Then it was work from home every day, and all I did was binge eat at nights with comfort food. He says it's really difficult, but you can turn it around if you do it all early enough. Eat the right things and exercise. He says, ultimately, though, it is down to the individual, and it is very hard indeed. Best wishes with your battle against that, Adrian. Now, e-scooters, let's move on, shall we? What do you think to them? Do you have one? Do you like them? Or do you think they're an absolute menace? I've got one. I like it, just to make sure that I don't get arrested while I'm live on air or anything. I obviously use it within the confines of the law. But what do we think to this? Do you like them, Peter? I'm going to start with you.
No, I think they should remain banned. People say, should they be banned? They are banned, and they should remain banned. They're powerful motor vehicles. It's very easy to get rid of the speed governors that have fitted to them, and you can do 40 miles an hour on them. And there are existing models which can do 70. They are the ideal tool for the mugger, for the drug dealer, and for the totally selfish person who wants to ride fast along the pavement, knocking people down. We've had a tragic death associated with them now. We've had many injuries, including injuries to small children already, even while they've been semi-legal in some areas, thanks to Grant Shapps' ridiculous scheme where you're allowed to use them if you rent them from specified schemes, but not allowed to use them if you buy them privately. But I see them all the time, and the numbers of them intensify. You can't hear them. They're dangerous to their own riders because they're so fantastically unstable with the small wheels. You hit a pothole you'll go flying. They're notorious, particularly, and I warn you of this if you're using them, for grave liver injuries, because the height of the handlebars will get you in the liver if you have an accident on them. And if they become fully legal, as Grant Shapps intends, people will be amazed at how many of them there are. This is all known. Paris had a so-called experiment with e-scooters 2 or 3 years ago. People were injured, including, very tragically, an extremely talented concert pianist whose arm was smashed as a result of these things careering along the pavement. Once they are legal, you will never be safe on the pavements or on a footpath again for the rest of your life, nor will your children, nor will your elderly relatives, nor especially will blind and deaf people be. It is the most stupid decision, and I'm amazed that Grant Shapps has taken it. And I tried as hard as I could to get some sort of campaign going against it. And everybody said, why are you bothered about this stupid, trivial, minor thing? Well, to which I reply, you wait till they're everywhere and tell me it's stupid, trivial and minor.
I've got to be honest, you've not put me off mine though, Peter. I listened intently, but I'm still thinking.
Well, what is it that's good about them?
Convenience, speed, get me from A to B in an effective...
At the expense of other people.
But no, because I drive it as a responsible individual. I don't go around, I don't play pinball with pedestrians trying to score points as I go.
You're not safe. You're taking a very grave risk with yourself, and you're then quite likely to end up in an ambulance and in A&E and in a hospital.
Well, if I do, if I fall off my e-scooter...
They're dangerous to ride, as well as for their riders, as well as they are dangerous to pedestrians.
Jacqueline, are you a fan? Do you think it should be outlawed?
Well, they're not just a nightmare on the pavement, as Peter has said. They're an absolute nightmare when they're on the roads, because I actually drive. OK, you may not see them in the countryside, but if you're around the cities, you know, if it's not bad enough with the cyclists jumping the lights every 5 minutes or 5 seconds, which they do frequently, certainly in London and other cities, the e-scooters are doing the same. You also can barely see them because a lot of people have them, they seem to be all painted black. They don't seem to have a light on them at all.
They do have a light on.
Well, a lot of them I've seen haven't got a light on, unfortunately. And they can do, as quite rightly has been said, you know, they may have limiters on them, but people are actually overriding the limiters, I'm quite sure. And
yeah, they de-restrict. Some people would de-restrict them, but then people de-restrict mopeds, for example. But I've just conscious of the time. Marianne, your thoughts very briefly.
Well, I think basically the cat is out of the bag. Unless we ban everything completely, including the hire scooters, then the ones that you can rent, then what Grant Shapps needs to do is, instead of months or perhaps years later going, oh, yeah, we should probably legislate for that, so everyone knows we're on the same page, you know what is legal and what isn't legal, so you, Michelle, would know what you are actually allowed to do, where you should be riding your bike. Maybe
Definitely.
The enforcement should be that you have to, for example, like with the rental scooters, you're supposed to have a provisional licence. You should have lights on your scooter. You should be wearing a helmet. There should be a maximum speed limit. You should know whether you're on the pavement or the road.
Make sure they're registered.
Well, in the same way that we enforce...
The police who haven't been seen for years, who've been abducted by aliens, are they going to enforce it? Nobody's going to enforce it. You'll be on your own on the pavement. When they come, I've had it. On Kensington High Street a couple of weeks ago, 4 of them with huge, great, hulking 20-somethings riding them fast in a phalanx down the pavement, everybody jumping to one side to save themselves. That's what's going to be happening.
It's not always just the tool, it's how you use it.
There you go. It's not the tool, it's how you use it. I've heard that
so
said
they're terrible for
a lot.
exercise.
It's got to be said.
Take exercise away from people, and that's
right.
not to use them.
Well, Jamie says, I love Peter Hitchens. Will he go for dinner with me? I'll let Peter ponder that. We're just about after the show. Stephen says, Michelle, if you fall off your scooter, I'll kiss every scratch better. Bit weird, but thank you. Right, that's pretty much all we have now got time for. I shall leave with that image in my mind. Mark says, e-scooters are for idiots. There you go. I shall end on that note. That's me told.
For a lot of idiots.
Right, thank you very much to my panel, and thank you at home for your company tonight. Have a great night, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Hello again, I'm Aidan McGibbon from the Met Office. A warm night for many of us, and then sunny and hot in places during Thursday. Temperatures are rising over the next few days, but not for everyone. There are some weather fronts in the northwest which will continue to affect parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, particularly towards the northwest. Cloud and a few outbreaks of rain here. Elsewhere, a lot of high pressure and clear spells overnight, widely across England and Wales, but some clear spells also affecting eastern parts of Northern Ireland, southern and eastern Scotland. It's really towards the far northwest of Scotland, the Northwest Highlands, the Western Isles and perhaps Shetland, where we'll see some outbreaks of rain overnight. But otherwise, a dry night for many and a warm night. Temperatures in the double figures across the UK. A bright start then for eastern Scotland, southern Scotland, much of England and Wales Thursday morning. And with the strong sunshine from the word go, temperatures will shoot up. But for parts of central and western Scotland, Northern Ireland, and then elsewhere across Scotland, it looks like there'll be some showery rain turning up by the afternoon. Cooler here, but further south, it looks like temperatures will reach 29 or even 30 Celsius in some spots in the southeast. We're looking at mid-20s across parts of Wales, low 20s for parts of southern and eastern Scotland. But for Scotland, for the far north of Northern Ireland, we'll see outbreaks of rain, heavy and persistent for western Scotland by dawn on Friday. Clear spells once again further south and a muggy night to come. Temperatures really not dropping far on Friday morning and then rising quickly during the day with